This is Lord Thaddeus Cray, and today I'm going to be expanding a little bit on a subject that I have done before. It's actually one of my first videos, and that, of course, was about the Bigfoot. But this, as I said, is going to be a slight expansion on that. And I'm not just going to be covering Sasquatch and the other few creatures I brought up. Now, those of you who have listened to that will understand that I believe very firmly that these creatures are beings that have evolved, primates, hominoids, whatever you want to call them, that have evolved beside mankind, or just in different ways. And they have probably abilities and knowledges and talents that, of course, we're not going to understand. Just like they're probably not going to be too interested in, to be honest, going around using the type of technological toys that we enjoy, if you get my drift. But it's obvious they seem to understand them. No, this time I'm going to be branching out straight up into hominids themselves, the different types throughout the world. I'm just going to be bringing about 8 of them up, but it should be enough to definitely get you thinking on things. The first one, of course, we already know, Sasquatch. Speaks for itself. You already know about the Patterson-Gimlin film and all that, and just the research that has gone on, I'd say, over the last century about these creatures, and of course, people are skeptical, which is understandable. You can't blame them for that. And obviously, proof is either being not found or being suppressed by very powerful forces. And that's something I'm going to bring up. You have to understand. If you found a sapient or sentient creature that lives in the woods, you have to understand one thing. Industry in itself would come to a screeching halt. I'm just going to leave it at that. There is no other way to say it. And that in itself would probably destroy what already is wrecked of our economy, which the pandemic ain't started. That would finish, if you get my drift. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, Sasquatch is the most known. It is a creature that is throughout our country, mainly through the northern parts. But there's definitely many of them in the south, as well as, just like I said, all over. Big, massive, hairy humanoid beings that, like I told you, I believe very firmly they have knowledges and abilities that we can't understand. It's like they wouldn't be too interested in worrying about us and the things that we've created. That in itself, I'm just going to leave it at that. The next thing I'm going to bring up is something that a man named Brian Sullivan has said about. And I'm going to be speaking about the Wendigo, but not the big deer-headed monster, like the antlers and big teeth and, basically a man possessed by a spirit of gluttony. The old Canadian native stories about that, pretty much a monster that lives to eat flesh and mimics people and calls some poor bastard up to it, and of course, it consumes them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about another term. But it might be the same thing, to a limited extent. But actually, this type of Wendigo, it's pronounced differently. But Mr. Sullivan, I believe, he claims to have been a witness to an encounter with one of these monsters. And to be honest, I believe him. And then some. His story is very straightforward. There's no changes to it. I do believe the dude's telling the truth. Very fascinating man. Look him up. He also goes by the nickname of Duke. Very fascinating man. I've actually had the pleasure of talking to a few people personally who know him. And believe me, like I said, very fascinating gentleman. But moving on from that, this is obviously it's like a big, massive Sasquatch type monster that claws, fangs, pretty much nightmare fuel, if you get my drift. This is mainly a creature that dwells, again, just like the spirit type of Wendigo. This creature, this type of hominoid, seems to live up in the northern parts of this country. Mainly Canada, Alaska, things like that. Now I'm going to go in and bring up something that is kind of down here in the south. Now, there have been some sightings of them in Texas, but mainly, I would say, in Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, things like that in the swamps. These things are called the skunk apes. These critters are pure nasty, if you get my drift. Things that supposedly the description of these creatures is more like that of a big ape, if you get my drift. Bigger than people, but not massive like, the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch up north, or in the northwestern, kind of like the northwestern, eastern parts of the country. These things are very aggressive, and I wouldn't be surprised if these type of swamp animals, I don't even call them animals, beings, would definitely make your experience a nightmare if you ever came across one. Again, very hard to find them, very smart, and just very aggressive. And here's one that I'm not too familiar with, but at the same time it is fascinating. It's called the Grassman. That is something that is found mainly, like in Ohio and things like this, and these things love cattle. It sounds almost like regular Bigfoot to an extent, but I might be wrong on that. These things, like I said, it seems they love to eat cattle, sheep, whatever they can get their mitts on. And suffice to say, I wouldn't be surprised if these things raided crops, too. I know DW did a story not too long ago about one that was going around raiding strawberries, of all things. No, it wasn't strawberries, it was tomatoes. I mean, that in itself was a wild story, and I believe it. Of course, there's sightings of this grassman also in the Appalachians, like the mountains and all that. I believe, again, like I said, this thing is most likely just regular Bigfoot. Just another name for it. Now I'm going to be going a little bit further, kind of across the globe, literally in some cases. Of course, you're familiar with the Yeti. And this one I remember reading books about when I was a kid. It's fascinating. The stuff, I can't even get started enough. I'd probably be doing hours if I could tell you what I remember reading about the Yeti. But I'm just going to keep it straight up. These things supposedly are in the Himalayas. A lot of the cold parts of northern Asia, things like that. You're talking some pretty, very interesting, to say the least. However, there is actually an Arctic version of the Bigfoot, which may surprise you. But suffice to say, supposedly light colors, white, big, very massive. Supposedly the Yeti's, stockier than the Sasquatch, which in itself, that's scary enough. And there have been some tales of these things snatching campers, people, livestock, for breeding, eating, pretty much. What haven't these things been rumored to be doing? But you also have to remember one thing. There is a species of ape. I'm not sure if it's a great ape. I don't know, but I know it's a species of either large monkey or ape that lives in those areas up in the Himalayas. So you got to remember that monkey could be a mistaken identity for the Yeti. I'm going to bring one up right here, which is something which is different, and I think it could be very possible that this is not necessarily a further evolved type of primate, like I do believe firmly Bigfoot is, but it might be something else. It's called the Yeren. This is in China, and this is big, massive creatures, and it's just very interesting, to say the least. There's different stories of them, but many of them were described as big orange, almost beings almost like a gigantic orangutan. Look up if you get a chance a Gigantopithecus. Supposedly that was a prehistoric ape that lived, a long time ago, but it was massive. As a matter of fact, us human beings may have contributed to its extinction, if you get my drift, but maybe it didn't go extinct at all. That could be what the Yeren is. And this is a very interesting one right here. The Mapinguari, or a Maricoxal, is a very interesting thing. It's supposedly a Bigfoot that lives in the South American rainforests. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised about that. And what I mean by that is, think about it. Only God himself knows what kind of creatures have not been, actually live undiscovered in those South American rainforests. I'm just leaving it at that. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a Bigfoot that lives down there compared to, here in the United States. And maybe it's evolved similar to that of the swamp ape. Who knows? And of course, we have something that is very interesting. The Aboriginals describe this creature, and that would be the Yowie. Yes, sir, the Yowie. That in itself is a hominoid that I would not want to piss off. Pretty much similar to Bigfoot, but very, very violent, very vicious, and of course, I think you understand where I'm going with this. People supposedly been attacked by these things. I don't know if they've been eaten or not, but definitely I wouldn't be surprised if there's some disappearances. You have to understand one thing. The outback is enormous. I mean, it's huge. It's beyond really almost human comprehension what the hell could be out there. Just going to leave it at that. And then, of course, you have a couple of them I'm going to bring up. One, of course, is again up north a lot of times, but it's a legend by natives. I want to say in Canada, parts of the northern parts of North America. Of course, that being here in the States. Also, bear with me. Just other areas in the North American continent, and that would be the Janasqua. Janasqua supposedly are massive hominoids that love to roll around, and Brian Sullivan has brought this one up too, so that's something else to think on. That might have been the one he saw. I thought it was the Wendigo, but I could be wrong. But I do believe he's seen these creatures too. Mr. Sullivan described these things as big, hairy monsters that would roll around in the dirt, and of course pebbles would stick to their fur or whatever. And naturally, that creates a natural armor. These things are definitely cannibalistic, and they basically want you on a dinner plate. That's simple. They love to kidnap, rape women, eat people, just basically the awful of the awful. These boys are it. Just that. And yes, they are definitely part of Native American folklore. However, there are other additions to that, where they would be magical beings that would have weapons and just scary stuff. Who knows what these things are? But they're definitely up there on the list of a hominid that I would not want to ever cross paths with. Another one to think about, and the final one I'm going to really bring up, is the Googwee. This one there's been sightings really, I want to say all over the world, but I could be wrong. I know there's been many of them, of course, here in the States. Whether it be just about all over. Definitely in the northern parts. I do believe also in the southern. Basically, it is a Bigfoot or Bigfoot-type monster that has a baboon-like face, and the legends of them are called, basically they're called face eaters. They're larger than your average Bigfoot. They're vicious, totally vicious, and to say the least, they're the stuff of nightmares. I'm sorry, but basically, if I saw a big old 10-foot baboon trying to come near me and want to kill me, I'm pretty sure there would be a response that would be nothing short of pure terror. That, to me, that and the Janasqua, to me, are the most terrifying of all the hominoids that have been brought up on this entire list that I've put across. It's just something to think about. Look them up. Look all these terms up. These creatures are most likely definitely out there, and I definitely just wanted to kind of expand on beyond just the Bigfoot, if you get my drift, and to kind of get people to think. I'm no expert on this stuff. I never claim to be. I never will be. But I'm just one who tries to have an open mind more than many. Also, you guys already know the drill. If you want to get a chance to tell your stories, your experiences with any kind of cryptid, whether it be one of the things I brought up, or whatever it is, hit me up, and I'll put you on John Bell's show, the Dogman Cam's radio show. Or if you've had certain types of supernatural, let's say it be ghosts, angels fallen or otherwise, or whatever it is, that would basically put you definitely on the path to be putting on Sean Graham's show, Chasing the Truth. Both shows are excellent. I mean, believe me, I don't just produce for them, I listen to them. These guys do good work. And if you want to be on Sean's show, again, you get a chance to have your story told. Hit me up in the comments. Those who are in the Dogman Camp's Facebook group know how to reach me. Look up Wes Vic, hit me up in Messenger, or wesvic@dogmancams.com. Hit me up, and believe me, I guarantee you, I'll get to you. And I'll give you that chance. I appreciate you guys listening to me blather on, and hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, it gets you to think, and that's what I'm here to do. You guys be blessed and be safe.